Right, video people. Simon Dingle's here. Jenny Josephson has magically transformed herself into a logo. We're ready to go. Except for pressing the record button. Here we go.
A minuscule portion of the Daily Tech News Show was brought to you by me. Because I went to patreon.com/acedetect and donated $1 a month to a podcast that I really enjoy. Won't you join me?
This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, January 13th, 2015. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Simon Dingle, broadcaster and product guy from South Africa. Good to have you on the show, Simon. It's been too long since we talked.
It's great to be on the show, Tom, and congratulations on what you've achieved with it so far. I've been enjoying watching, and you've got a great product together. It's good times.
Well, thanks, man. We've been really lucky in having great contributors and a great audience, and I love getting people on with different perspectives from all over the place, so I've been looking forward to having you on. Are you ready to discuss some headlines?
I believe I am.
Well, let's do it then. Engadget reports that Facebook has partnered with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to deliver location-specific Amber Alerts. Those are the things that inform users about missing or abducted children in the United States. The alerts include photos of the child, license plate numbers, and any other relevant information, and will appear on mobile devices and desktops. Facebook was inspired to add Amber Alerts after missing children were recovered, in part due to information posted independently on Facebook by other users. Do you have anything similar to Amber Alert in South Africa?
We probably do, and I wouldn't know what it's called. But I'm hoping that this is something that, if it works and it's effective in the US, that it'll make its way to the rest of the world. Good on you, Facebook.
PC World reports Allcast is now available for iOS users, as Android users already know, probably. Allcast can send photos, videos, and music from your mobile device to multiple devices, not just a Chromecast device, not even just a Chromecast-compatible device, but the Xbox, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, certain smart TVs. The app can access anything on your camera, as well as Google+, Dropbox, and Instagram. And it also accesses your music library on iOS. The free version has a time limit, though. You can only stream for a certain amount of time. You want to get the $5 paid version if you want to take away that limit, and paying for it also gets rid of ads. You use Allcast? You excited about Allcast?
I don't, but I'm going to try it out now. I think, AirPlay is a big part of the lock-in problem I have with iOS. I'm Android at heart and iOS in practice, and a big part of that is because I love my Apple TV. We use a lot of streaming in my office for presentations, and that's all based off of AirPlay. AirPlay is a remarkable lock-in device, and so the more services that bring this kind of streaming to multiple platforms, the better. So I'll definitely be checking it out.
All right, excellent. Windows 7 is getting old. Starting to see the wrinkles. First sign occurred today as free tech support for the operating system has ended. That also means no new features will be added to the operating system. Microsoft would rather you upgrade to Windows 8.1, of course. Believe it or not, Windows 7 is more than 5 years old at this point. Wow. You can still pay for support, if you want, through 2020, and Microsoft will continue to patch security issues if you're still using Windows 7. You probably should get off Windows XP at this point.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. Fujitsu has a smart ring that not only does motion control, but recognizes in-air handwriting. You trace letters with your fingertip in the air, and motion sensors translate the movements to written characters. Ring also has an NFC reader in it, so you can pair it or activate it, get instructions from a device. Engadget reports Fujitsu is conducting real-world tests right now and hopes to have a product out before the end of its fiscal year, which is March 2016. Boing Boing has the tale of a man from Hong Kong who tried to cross over the Chinese border with 94 iPhones strapped to himself. Torso, legs, groin, you name it. Customs officials stopped the man for weird walking posture and joint stiffness. That makes sense. I'm guessing they don't use metal detectors at that crossing. The man was carrying iPhone 6 and 6 Plus models, which have been available for purchase at Apple stores inside of China since mid-October.
What does my head in is not only is the iPhone available at Apple stores in China, it's manufactured in Shenzhen, which, if my memory of Chinese geography is correct, is just north of Hong Kong. So they got manufactured in Shenzhen, shipped off to, I don't know, the USA or wherever these were procured, brought into Hong Kong, strapped to a dude to then walk them back into Shenzhen.
To the Michelin Man it.
That's the world we live in, man.
That's amazing. Yeah, there must be some profit in it. 94 is a little ambitious, I gotta say.
And you know what? There probably is a profit in it. And this happens in my country too. A lot of iPhones make their way into South Africa, mostly from the US, where it's probably the cheapest place to get one. And you can get it from carriers in South Africa, but you can save a few bucks by getting one that's been gray imported. So I kind of get where they're coming from. But
it's taking advantage of the currency differences and the different pricing in different countries and that sort of thing. So yeah.
And subsidies in bigger markets, I guess.
Yeah. El Nuevo Herald reports Cuba's Etexa Telecom denies that they will offer Wi-Fi service in Santiago de Cuba, as we had mentioned yesterday, or at least offer it to everybody. The original report was based on an announcement from the Cuban Journalists Association, an official government organization. Etexa called the information false and said it is only offering Wi-Fi at a technological part through the youth club navigation network called Tinored. So couple of official organizations at odds there, but Etexa is the one that's rolling it out, so I guess if they say it's not coming, not coming. And Gadget reports Uber announced it will share some of its ride data with the city of Boston. The anonymized metadata zip code tabulation area starts with zip code tabulation area, and then it tells you the start and end areas of the trips. Tabulation areas are a little broader than just zip codes. They take small zip codes sometimes and they combine them for ease of reading. Also includes distance traveled, time, date, duration of the trip. Boston hopes to use the data to improve city planning. Uber hopes it means the city of Boston is going to be nicer to them from now on, is my guess.
I suspect that might be.
TechCrunch reports a report from App Figures indicates more new apps came to the Google Play Store than the iOS App Store in 2014 for the first time. Google Play's developer community growth also exceeded iOS for the third year in a row. The fastest growing app category for Apple was business, while for Google, it was games. Both app stores and Amazon's App Store experienced growth of at least 50% or more. So all the app stores are booming, but Google Play seems to have the most momentum right now.
That's true, and a lot of these numbers are kind of meaningless. And you know, from the perspective of somebody who works on apps, what I'm really interested in is engagement on those platforms. You know, having a lot of apps in the store, okay, and obviously Android being the most open of the two stores will have more applications available. Most of it will probably be junk. So these numbers are interesting, but what I want to get at is the all-important commerce numbers. You know, are people spending money on these platforms, and how are they engaging with apps on these platforms? And you know, anecdotally from our own data, you know, we've seen over the last year in particular engagement on Android picking up, and I think there's a lot contributing to that. But I think it's good times for Android on all fronts at the moment.
Yeah, from other studies, the revenue picture still seems to benefit iOS developers for sure. And App Annie today announced that they're going to start measuring engagement, which will be an interesting number to take a look at as well.
Yeah, there's a fine line there you don't want to tread across in terms of spying on users. But I mean, you know, the more data you can get about engagement, the better, I guess.
Time now for some news from you. All of our stories, at least, are informed. Our story selection is informed by dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Go there and submit stuff, or at the very least vote on the stuff you'd like to see, and you can vote things down if you're like, I don't think this is worth being on the show. It's all part of the subreddit, which we use to decide what to talk about on the show, and we like to highlight a couple posts from there every day. Philo1927 posted the multi-channel news article assessing the world's readiness for 4K streaming. Akamai's latest State of the Internet report suggests 15 megabits per second is required for sustained adaptive bitrate 4K streaming. Okay, so how are we doing? 12% of connections to Akamai around the world can be considered 4K ready. Now you may think that's pretty low, but that's a 32% jump up from the same time last year. South Korea is the most prepared with 66% of its connections ready, followed by Hong Kong at 37%, then Japan, Switzerland, Netherlands, Latvia, Sweden, Norway, Singapore, and Belgium. Those last three had 21% readiness. U.S. as a whole is about 19% ready. And the most recent South African numbers I could find, I looked for them, were from a year ago, and at that time it was 1.4% ready.
And even that sounds like a lot to me.
Yeah.
The bandwidth situation in South Africa, especially when it comes to streaming services, is not great. And especially considering that a lot of the streaming services South Africans want to access are coming offshore. So it's coming in on international bandwidth, which has improved substantially over the last few years. In fact, our domestic networks are the real problem. But you can imagine in a place like South Korea, most of that content is being served in country. It's a completely different discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that it's interesting that more attention is being paid to bandwidth readiness for 4K than was paid when HD TV came around. So even even 1080p, which came around a little later than 720p as far as widespread content being available. We thought of bandwidth. We thought, well, Netflix streaming will never work because we don't have enough bandwidth for high definition signals.
Right. And, again, we're not really hearing the market, screaming for 4K, screaming in demand. It's, it's kind of curious seeing this much attention given to the readiness for this technology. I think most consumers, I suspect in the US, like in South Africa, are pretty happy if they can get a stable 720p stream going. They'd love 1080p, but 4K is like beyond the realms of reality right now.
It's going to be another 5 years, I think, before it has any kind of significant acceptance. And even then, the studios are pushing the quality, not the pixels anymore. They're really talking about high dynamic range, calling it UHD, Ultra HD instead of 4K, because the amount of pixels on there isn't as important as it was in the jump from 480 to 720.
Yeah.
Hobbit from PA sent us the Business Insider report that Amazon Studios has signed Woody Allen to create his first ever television series. The show will be a half-hour long, available to Prime Instant Video subscribers in the US, UK, and Germany. Woody Allen got his start writing in television in the late 1950s. He wrote monologues for The Tonight Show, various comedy specials. He did one for Sid Caesar. But Allen's stand-up career began to blossom, and he began appearing on TV shows instead of writing them. And of course, he went on to a long and storied film career. Allen's Amazon show does not yet have a title or a release date. In fact, Woody Allen's quote was like he has no ideas for it yet, which is typical Woody Allen, I guess. And
it's hard to imagine it not doing well.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was talking with Jenny before the show, too. There was an article, the Wall Street Journal, a post on their blog, actually, making a lot of the fact that Amazon didn't take this and put it in their pilot system. They're very famous for taking a lot of pilots and putting them up, getting feedback from the audience before they greenlight them. I guess when you're dealing with Woody Allen, it's an all or nothing situation. You either give him the whole series or he doesn't do it.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about British Prime Minister David Cameron. He was speaking yesterday on the campaign trail. If you're not aware, there is an election going on in the UK right now. He called for stronger legislation against secure forms of communication. Now, there's some misleading headlines out there. He actually didn't say much about encryption, if anything. He did not talk about WhatsApp and Snapchat directly. He wasn't saying shut them down. What he did say is that he would like telecom operators and internet service providers to store more data on people's activities, including social network messages. Here's the quote. Do we want to allow a means of communication between people which even in extremis, with a signed warrant from the Home Secretary personally, we cannot read? And then he went on to talk a little bit about why they would need that and said, are we going to allow a means of communication where it simply isn't possible to do that? My answer to that is no, we must not. So he's making a more subtle argument here, which is, we have the ability to open a letter. If we see a letter from a bad guy coming through and find out what he's saying, we have the ability to tap a telephone conversation. If you don't make it easy for me to be able to get the bad guy's internet communications, that's bad. Now, he very carefully avoided using encryption because really the only way to do this is to put a backdoor into encryption and say, you know what? Give the government a chance with a warrant, he's saying. It's not warrantless wiretapping. He's saying with a warrant to go in and crack the encryption, break in and find out what it says. Simon, can that actually be achieved?
Well, no, right? And I think that's part of the indignation and the extreme response that's kind of met this news. And as you said, he was misquoted far and wide. But I think that extreme response is correct because he doesn't understand what he's asking for. And this is something, I mean, he's not the first to do this. We've seen politicians all over the world demanding this kind of, I don't know what to call it, control, but with zero understanding of the implications, right? I mean, fundamentally, to achieve this, you're talking about breaking the internet. There's no other way really to do this. And I think Cory Doctorow's piece on Boing Boing probably did the best job, as he always does, of articulating the implications. And in fact, he broke it down in terms of what David Cameron is really proposing. If we carry this through logically, to meet this, we're talking about all Britain's communications being easy for criminals, voyeurs, and foreign spies to intercept. That would be one of the implications. Another one of the implications that really struck out to me is proprietary operating systems being ordered to redesign their operating systems as walled gardens that only allow users to run software from an app store, which will not sell or give secure software to Britons. And then, on the other hand, free and open source operating systems that power the energy, banking, e-commerce, and infrastructure sectors, in Cory's words, must be banned outright, because how else would you get them to comply? And the list goes on and on. And so it's really just, it's short-sighted. It's also just, and he's a politician, so you kind of expect this from him, but the timing of a request like this coming during a week when we've seen one of the most horrific attacks in a European city, where people are feeling outraged, where people are scared, looking over their shoulders, worried about terrorist networks operating within their borders, and he chooses that time to come and ask for something that he could get some momentum behind now, but which practically just isn't possible.
Yeah, he brought up the murders at Charlie Hebdo.
Of course he did.
as one of the justifications of this. And really, what this is a general reaction. This is David Cameron doing it this time, the Prime Minister of the UK. We've heard very similar arguments from the FBI head, from the NSA head, from several people. There are countries that have this. Russia has a law like this already on the books. So does Iran. Right. So does Syria. What the problem I have with it is you really aren't getting the bad guys when you do this. For one thing, I mean, there's all kinds of regional arguments, which, as you mentioned, Cory Doctorow makes those in his Boing Boing post about the fact that, well, the UK does this and the rest of the world doesn't. You're just basically pushing all the communication outside your borders. And the way the internet works, that's not very effective whatsoever. But even if everybody agreed, okay, we'll have a backdoor for legitimate governments to look in with a warrant, at certain times, that backdoor will be exploited by people that you don't want to exploit it. So right. You are essentially in the justification of preventing an unlikely scenario. And I'm not trying to minimize the effects of terrorism or the Charlie Hebdo murders, but those are rare. In the pursuit of limiting rare but devastating events, you are making it more common for many small crimes to happen. And I don't think that's the right trade-off.
Right. And as you alluded to, bureaucracy in most of its execution makes life really difficult for the good guys, and in fact creates pockets for the bad guys to operate in. The other thing is, this kind of proposal, it sort of looks at the reactionary response to crimes. Like, after the fact, we could do a better job of investigating crimes if we had access to this information. What we should be more interested in is preventing this kind of thing from happening. And what are the societal and other kind of things we can put in place to prevent the bad things from happening, instead of this kind of proximate reactionary mindset that we've got to figuring out what happened after the fact.
I do think Prime Minister Cameron, were he here, and I would be very shocked if he were, would say, well, we want to prevent it too, and that's why we need this to be able to, go after the people that we know are threats and stop them before they do bad things. But your point is well taken, which is, if you change the conditions such that these sorts of things are less likely to happen, that's much more effective.
Absolutely. But now, you kind of imagine that a country like France had this kind of control in place. Let's pretend it was possible, because it isn't. Would that have perhaps prevented what had happened in Paris last week? And I have to think that the answer is no. I mean, we don't know yet exactly how the the terrorists coordinated their actions ahead of the attack in Paris. But there's very little to suggest that having these controls in place would have helped an investigation into that at all, and certainly wouldn't have prevented anything from happening.
David Cameron just showed up in the chat room, by the way.
Oh, did he? Great.
Well, it's the user ID says David Cameron, so
must be him then.
Must be him.
Look for a little blue tick, does he?
Yeah. So I do think that this is a thorny issue as far as like what the balance should be as far as protection versus rights. But I think it's a false issue to say, I know you want your rights, but we need to be able to crack encryption, because when you put a backdoor into encryption, which as far as I know is the only way to achieve David Cameron's goal here, even though he doesn't say it explicitly, you actually weaken encryption and make it more likely that more crimes are being done, which is not protecting people. It's actually endangering people, and Cory Doctorow makes that point as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just to put a finer point on it, it's not possible, and we've seen how in the execution in China and Iran, how these systems just don't work. I traveled to Beijing, flipped open my phone on China Mobile, and I couldn't access Twitter at the time. I think this was 2012, if I remember correctly. There were a whole bunch of sites I couldn't access, but I had a Kindle with me, and over WhisperNet with the browser on the Kindle, I could get at just about any website I wanted to, which was probably, using an embedded SIM on China Mobile too, but by some who knows what. These systems are full of holes. They don't prevent anything. They're easy to get around for the bad guys, and they make life really difficult for the good guys, as you said.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our pick of the day from Joe Frucci today. And I apologize if I mispronounced. I made my best stab at your last name, Joe. My pick is the book Code, says Joe, The Hidden Language of Computer Hardware and Software by Charles Petzold. If you're at all interested in technology, and you probably are since you're listening to this Tech News podcast, this book is a serious eye-opener. We use these things, computers, tablets, smartphones, every day, but the vast majority of us don't know how they work. How do they work? How can an array of transistors play a movie on my screen? In this book, the author takes you through the process of building a theoretical computer, starting with nothing but a flashlight. It's very easy to understand. It's highly relevant, despite the fact that it was published 15 years ago. And it's the #1 seller in Theory of Computing section on Amazon. But don't let that categorization scare you. It's very approachable, requires no computing knowledge. And Joe says it's definitely his favorite book. I have not read The Hidden Language of Computer Hardware and Software. I have heard of it before, but I think Joe just convinced me to get off my duff and read this.
Yeah, it looks like a great book. It kind of, just listening to the description of it, it reminds me, I don't know if you've ever seen the video of Bjork explaining how her television works.
Oh, yes. Not in a long time, but yes.
It's a fantastic video.
Yeah.
We've pasted a link somewhere. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we all take for granted, even those of us, in the industry. There's a lot of how these things work that I just, frankly don't know. And if it sounds like this book does a really great job of taking the complexities and explaining them in a really approachable manner. So I'm definitely going to go and line it up.
Which can really change your approach to how you use these things. I remember I read Where Wizards Stay Up Late, which is a history of how the internet was developed, but I learned so much about how the internet worked by reading that. And that it really helped me make better use of the internet because I understood more about what was going on. So thanks for that, Joe. Good pick.
Yeah.
Send your picks to feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com, and you can find my picks as well as a bunch of yours at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. All right, got a few emails to get to. Alan was fascinated by our discussion about AI and its potential dangers. Did you see the letter from the Institute saying we really need to be careful with AI that came out yesterday?
Yeah, I didn't read it in its entirety, but I caught your show yesterday where you were discussing it.
The Future of Life Institute. I was trying to remember their name.
Yeah, and it's interesting seeing this discussion evolve. Everybody kind of takes the discussion for granted until you get somebody like Elon Musk weighing in on it, and it's like, well, Elon Musk says we should be concerned.
And also Max Tegmark. And also Stephen Hawking. Yeah.
Yeah. And when that starts piling up, it's like, well, maybe there's something. But I don't know if you've read the last book Ray Kurzweil wrote. I think it was the last book he wrote, How to Create a Mind. And I've always found, he's arguably, given his background, founding was a Nuance Software, and his contributions to artificial intelligence, he really has one of the more sort of well-rounded understandings of how this field is evolving and the potential implications for individuals and society. And what I haven't seen, and I might just be ignorant, is him weighing in on this latest round of discussions. It feels like somebody needs to stand up for the benevolent AI, and I'm not hearing that too much.
Ray Kurzweil on behalf of the AI. Anyway, to
Which
get to
he may
Alan's
not
email,
be.
yeah, but no, I'm not saying he is either.
He could come in tomorrow and go, "No, guys, you should be worried." If you've seen what I've seen.
You run for the hills. Alan says, as a software developer, I'm also skeptical of any explosion of intelligence, but unexpected outcomes become more and more likely as systems get larger and more complex. Add learning and self-programming into the mix, and unexpected outcomes seem inevitable. Unpredictability infects all large systems, which is a contributing factor as to why software security is so difficult in everything from apps to websites. Yeah. While verification, validation, and security are important, unexpected outcomes mean that control really is the big problem. And it's a multi-layered problem. Even if we could be sure that we can make the AI do what we want it to do, how do we know what we want it to do? An AI may decide something is beneficial for us, even though we disagree, because we can't appreciate its benefit. It's smarter than us, is what Alan's saying. I think that's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
We got another one from Benno in Liverpool who wanted to quickly respond to yesterday's email regarding over-the-top service. Someone from England said, hey, we have great stuff here. What's taking you guys so long? In the U.S., Benno says, don't forget we pay a TV license tax if you use any of these services to watch the TV as it's broadcast. That's just under $20 a month to pay on top of what you pay for each service, just for that privilege. Also, while it's getting better, content is still an issue here, with most of the UK cord cutters I know still having to use DNS services and otherwise to get the content they want. So yeah, says Benno, we're not quite so advanced as we like to think we are. There's always somebody on the other side of every issue.
Yeah.
And then Dan Gardner was talking about the vulnerabilities in Android. I'd be curious to get your take on this. Have you looked at the thing where Google's saying we're not going to patch WebView for the old Android browser in Jelly Bean and older?
Very briefly, yeah. And that's
so
just the latest on a heap of concerns surrounding Android. There was that vulnerability that was exposed. Was it yesterday or late last week? Basically making it fairly simple for apps to get full access to your Google account, any app installed on an Android device. We actually tested that internally and got halfway there. It's worrying.
Yeah. Dan says Google appeared to claim they have no control over updating components of the Android OS. To this I call foul. He spells it F-O-W-L, by the way, on purpose, in quotes. Over the past couple of years, Google has been slowly decoupling various apps and components via the Google Services service from the core OS, such as the camera, Hangouts, Launcher, Gmail apps. My understanding is that this was done because they needed or wanted to update those apps without waiting on carriers to push the updates. So I see no reason why Google couldn't decouple and push out an update to the outdated browser to fix these problems. To enable the decoupling did require updating Google's service, so they probably can't decouple the browser on Android versions older than the version that included the updated services package, but they should be able to at least update those on Jelly Bean, says Dan.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Kind of have to give Google the benefit of the doubt, yeah. but it makes sense.
These sorts of things are always decided based on cost-benefit analysis. I think Dan is absolutely right. They could do that. I think what they're saying is it really isn't worth it for us because we're pushing everyone to be on the Chrome browser anyway. WebView is really only used in a lot of situations by apps, so those apps makers should do it and the OEMs should do it. They're basically deflecting responsibility, and the debate is whether they should be deflecting that responsibility. Sometimes it's reasonable for somebody to go, look, it's only used in software that we don't make. Why should we update it? That would be fair. A lot of people are like, yeah, but the Android browser is still used on Jelly Bean by a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And then Rob in Damascus, Maryland says several times this past week, I think it was Patrick Norton brought up the example when we came back to it once. You talked about early marketing for PCs, telling us how mom could put her recipes in the computer and how goofy that was in retrospect. Rob says, it finally makes sense. I combine Evernote, which lets me clip recipes from all over the web and is smart enough to tag them as recipes with the Evernote Food app on my iPad, which collects and presents just those notes tagged recipe in Evernote for me to browse and use in the kitchen. I've now got mom's recipes in the computer in a way that makes sense. You know what? When Rob wrote this, I realized I actually keep all my recipes in bookmarks, in a bookmark folder in a browser, and I put my tablet up in the kitchen when I cook.
I have my recipes in Evernote, and I never look at
you do Evernote as well?
They go into Evernote. They seldom ever come out of Evernote and into a dish.
Well, Rob, you're right. We're doing it now. We've got our recipes in a computer. It's just the computers had to get small enough to make sense in the kitchen.
Absolutely.
I think is what we learned here. Well, that is it. Really enjoyable show, Simon. Thanks for joining us. I know it's a little late for you, and I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, well, I appreciate being on. Thanks a lot, Tom. It's great. I've been watching the show. You've been doing a great job, and been looking forward to getting on. So I'm glad we finally got it together.
Twitter.com/Simon Dingle. It's SIMONDINGLE. Follow Simon. You've got some plans in the works that people might be interested in. I'm not sure how much you want to say about it, but
well, it's a domain and a dream right now. But a show I'm planning to launch later this year called Binary. So binary.fm will be the domain. There's not much to see there right now. But yeah, that'll be the other podcast I'll be doing along with Take Back the Day, which is just myself and my friend Sam talking productivity and philosophy and whatever else tickled our interest that week. Go
check out Take Back the Day too. If you're at all a fan of things like the Merlin Mann podcast on 5x5 or any of the podcast Without Pretense that Ayaz and John Strickland do, any of that kind of stuff, I think you'd love it. So.
Yeah, it's mostly self-indulgent for me and Sam, but it's fun.
Twitter.com/Simon Dingle. Thank you, Simon. And thank you, listeners. 4,692 patrons out there helping us get to the next level of the Patreon funding where we can bring on our final two. It's not the final five of Cylon fame, but at least it's two. Scott Johnson and Veronica Belmont will join us as regular contributors alongside Justin Robert Young, Patrick Beja, and Darren Kitchen and Len Peralta. So please, if you get some value from the show, and you can afford to give like $1 a month back, that will help us out greatly. We'd love to have that dollar. dailytechnewsshow.com/support, or go directly to Patreon, patreon.com/acedetect. Don't forget, you can have a voice in what stories we cover at our subreddit, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Our phone number is 512-559-DAILY. We're live on alphageekradio.com Monday through Friday, 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific. And our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. Patrick Beja is with us tomorrow. Talk to you then.
This podcast is part of the Frog Pants Studios Network. For more information about this and other shows, visit frogpants.com. Audio program so good, it's like you're there.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
I love that.
Me too. It just makes me laugh every time.
Nice.
That was fantastic. That was so much fun. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. Yeah, that was great fun. My brain is a little blunt at this time of the night, but that was good.
No, you were awake. I would never know what time it was.
Man,
good.
you just, the stories like David Cameron's, it's always so difficult to kind of make anything near as coherent an argument as Mr. Doctorow does. It's like, it's such a difficult story.
It's like he sets up the targets and just assassinates them.
It's like, I know this is wrong, and I know why, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, that was good. That was a good conversation. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was good fun. Thank you. That was great.
And I don't know if you've watched this part of the program before, but essentially after the video's done, while I edit the audio, we just leave the stream running. So you can stay if you want, but if you want to head to go to sleep, go
I'll
home.
stick around
by
a
all
bit.
means.
I'll stay. I've had all the Red Bull, so it's like the cool down lap.
Jenny, I'm looking at Showbot, and number 2 there from Paul Gannon,
Just my
I think
favorite.
it's
I know.
hilarious.
I know. I understand the hesitation.
I need your guidance.
Do it.
Really? We should?
Yeah.
Do you think?
It's
We have
Let me ask you a question.
Showbot.tv, Simon, is where we have people in the chat room suggesting our titles. And the one being suggested by Paul Gannon 01, I think it's Paul Gannon 01, is Amazon Gets a Woody.
Is it factually correct?
It is. It's absolutely factually correct.
Factually correct.
Could you explain it to a 5-year-old? Yes. Amazon got Woody Allen. There's also Woody from your favorite movie, Toy Story, but they
Which
didn't get
they
that Woody.
probably
They got a
also
different
have.
Woody.
So there is a legitimate, reasonable way to explain it to a 5-year-old, and all the 13-year-olds get to go,
Actually, how did the iPhone cross the border is pretty good, too.
How did the iPhone cross the... Or why?
I thought it was, why did the iPhone cross the border?
Yeah, I want to know why that guy crossed the border, too.
As fantastic as this video of Bjork explaining her television set is, the comments below it that have since been added are
Have
amazing.
accumulated over the years.
It's so great. This looks like a city.
She's just fascinating, too. In
I
her
just-
own right.
She just makes Iceland the most awesome place on earth.
That and like the giant ice fjords.
Yeah, and
those-
the Aurora Borealis.
The Aurora Borealis. And the
Yeah,
last
it's-
name naming system.
They really do have a lot going for them up there.
They have a lot going for them in the old Iceland there.
Yeah.
As long as their volcanoes stay quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get to shut down the UK every now and then.
It's good to have something.
Something of global significance.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't Bjork.
Just bear with me, dog. Just a few seconds longer. And
We didn't mention Elon Musk building satellites in Seattle. I love the picture at the top of that story, though. Yes,
What's the
I
picture that you're seeing?
It's just Elon Musk looking
Pensive,
pensive.
visionary.
Yeah.
All right, exporting the audio now. Oh, David Cameron left. That's so sad.
Oh, well, it's late.
Like what we were saying. I didn't get into the chat room for the show. I probably should have done that.
Next
You
time.
would have been distracted by David Cameron like why I was. Oh man. Yeah, so I considered that Seattle satellite story, but I feel like every time Elon Musk opens his mouth, it can't possibly be news.
Right.
And they're not
And
doing
also-
anything. He's just saying, I'd like to do this,
Yeah. And on the list of things that Elon Musk says he'd like to do, that's probably, one of the more mundane stories.
Exactly. It's one thing for him to go, I want to build a hyperloop from San Francisco to Los
Yeah.
Angeles. It's like, you kind of can't help but want to talk about that.
Satellites
Exactly.
are 20th century technology.
Seriously.
So,
Exactly.
God,
do
get with
better.
it, Elon Musk.
Still uses satellites.
Get with it, real life Tony Stark.
Connect to a satellite on your BlackBerry.
That would be cool.
On-time delivery of electric sport utility vehicles that appeal to women was also discussed. That doesn't seem to be getting the headlines, though.
A zip line to Venus.
Zip
That
line
I
to-
like.
Yes.
Why
Zip line
not?
to
She
Venus
involving a
is
zip line.
going to be an album title for somebody.
Do you follow bored Elon Musk on Twitter?
Yes.
No, I've
I
heard about
love
it. I don't
Ford
follow
Elon
him. though.
Musk.
It's the best.
That's a classic.
In fact, I need to follow him again. I unfollowed everybody at the end of last year on Twitter.
Oh yeah,
It
was that
getting
like a
it
New
was
Year's
getting a bit
resolution?
noisy in there. Yeah, it didn't work so well. But,
Well, that's part of that song. Should old acquaintance be forgot? Yes.
well, there
Yeah.
you go. That's what
You're-
it's
you
about.
answered that with a affirmative.
Yes, it should be.
It's a good policy. Keeps people on their toes. Be interesting. Or
I'm
else.
starting to feel like I am an old man behind the times because I don't use Facebook. And when I say I don't use it, I don't mean that I don't have an account. I do, but I never look at it. And
Well, Tom, if you want pictures of other people's children and also funny viral videos, join Facebook. I mean, come on.
yeah, I mean, Amber Alert though, like
Well,
this is
true.
this is where everyone is right
Yeah.
now. And even the story about, you know, and you can argue whether it's true or not, the story about like, oh, teens only use Facebook because their parents use it and it's very family oriented. I'm just like, wow, I don't use it for that either, but my sister's on it and my brother's on it and they use it for that. So am I really
Yeah.
part of the family if I'm not using Facebook? Like,
Well,
and it's very common, more and more common
Yeah.
for me to be talking to somebody and like, oh yeah, no, I saw that on Facebook. And I'm like, oh yeah, I hadn't heard about it. Like,
I will say that I think that at this point in the evolution of social networks, Facebook is the given, and everything else is sort of for a certain set of people, you know. But there was like an article a little while back that called Facebook a public utility, and
What?
yeah, with the exception of like people feel about it the way they feel about the gas company now. Like
I
it's-
think it should be Title II.
right. Why don't you just kick that one off?
I need Facebook rate regulation.
Oh boy. So, you know, except for Facebook not being, well, it is public. It's a publicly traded company, so
Yeah.
semi-public.
Public,
Public.
like an English public school, which is totally private.
Yeah, it's private. But yeah, it's interesting. I use Facebook more than I use anything else, although I try less hard on Facebook than I try on anything else. Like I
But
don't
you're
craft
you're normal.
things.
That's
Yeah.
totally like that's the common experience.
And I really
And-
have done a good job of like only friends on Facebook, like only friends, only people I know, mostly.
Yeah, I went through that exercise of cleaning up my friend list a while ago, and actually, whatever they've been doing with their algorithms has been working for me. Like, it's like that pop song that everybody hates, and you secretly listen to in the car when you're alone, and you'll never admit to your friends that you. but I'll kind of open Facebook and go, oh,
Look at that.
Yeah.
oh, they've had a baby, and then kind of snap out of it 2 hours later and
Look at that.
2 hours
try to
gone, yeah.
believe
Little
that.
baby.
Yeah.
Try to believe that Aloe is going to take off.
Okay. Water is the most essential element of life because without water you can't make coffee. Someone
true.
posted
True.
an
Statement
image.
is true.
That's the top of my news photo.
Were you on Facebook?
Yeah, I just opened Facebook. Click here, 4 free meals plus free shipping.
See?
My brother posted the weather for Wisconsin, where he lives. Negative 65 where he is.
Oh.
He also posted a winter haiku, but so did another person I follow. So it told me both of them did. Most of this is my brother right now. He's all over Facebook.
Like a powerful moss.
I've often thought of him that way. You are a powerful moss.
I find that when I get onto Twitter, it's kind of to add things to Pocket that I will never read later.
You'll never read that. I
You
use
like-
Pocket, and I like over the holidays. I was like, I'll read my Pocket list when I have all the. No, I totally. don't.
Right, sure you will. But you know what I mean? It's like you get into Twitter and I'm not sure what this is about, but there's a link, so I'll save that. And I kind of, oh, look, there's a funny GIF. And whereas on Facebook, I feel like I spend more time actually engaging with things. I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes any sense, but I guess it's because it's stuff that's kind of socially relevant to me. But
I do all my engagement on Twitter like an old man because it's been around since 2006. It's almost 10 years. Well, Facebook's been around almost that long too. So
yeah, that's true. I don't know. I just feel like Twitter's making me miserable.
I just read at replies.
You got so many.
No, I actually what revived my enjoyment of Twitter was TweetDeck. So I have enough curated lists that I get like a really good.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with TweetDeck being official, you don't miss, because I found a lot of the third-party clients, with Twitter's new card functionality and the way they're embedding media, like as a SoundCloud user, I'm loving being able to add a SoundCloud link and embed a player on mobile, which is rad.
Yeah.
But you miss out on a lot of that stuff with a lot of the third-party clients.
Well, when Simon Dingle's on this show, we are a lot more efficient because I'm all done.
Nice.
There you go.
I'm out of the post and everything. So
Cool.
I'm going to stop our video. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Goodbye.
Yeah.